New Year's Eve, 11:59 p.m. Miley sat curled up in the old gray armchair by the window, the one we almost threw out twice but somehow always kept. She was wearing my college hoodie, the oversized navy one with the frayed sleeve and fading letters. It used to be mine. Now, like so many other things, it had become hers by quiet default. A glass of sparkling wine dangled lazily in her hand. Fingers looped around the stem as if the effort to hold it was too much. Her legs were folded underneath her. The candles she'd insisted on lighting flickering soft yellow against the walls. The room smelled like cinnamon and those pine-scented sticks she always buys around the holidays. A playlist hummed in the background. Slow, mellow stuff. Her taste, not mine. But I didn't complain. This was her scene. The candles, the wine, the sweater. Even the clock we never fixed above the fireplace, it was 5 minutes slow, just like last year. She'd made everything feel intentional, like she wanted this moment to matter. And for a second, I believed her. I got up to toss a bottle in the recycling bin outside. Just a quick step onto the porch, nothing more. The air was biting cold, the kind that makes your teeth ache and your fingers regret not grabbing gloves. Our neighbors' kids were already launching fireworks across the street, and the sky above was starting to shimmer with sparks and smoke. As I tossed the bottle into the bin, I heard it. Click. Our front door, locking behind me. It was subtle. Easy to miss if you weren't listening for anything. But I heard it. That soft metal sound. It was like hearing a whisper in a thunderstorm and knowing it wasn't meant for you. I stood there for a second, hands still on the bin lid. I wasn't locked out, not really. I had my keys. But it struck me as strange. Why would she lock the door after I just stepped out? We were in a quiet neighborhood. No crime, no strangers walking around. And I told her where I was going. Just outside. 30 seconds. I shook it off, sort of. Told myself it was probably just muscle memory. Or maybe she was cold. Maybe she didn't even realize she did it. Still, when I walked back inside, the warm air didn't feel warm anymore. Something had shifted. The music was still playing. She wasn't in the living room anymore, though. Just her phone sitting there, face up on the couch. That alone was unusual. Miley never left her phone unattended. Not anymore. She used to. But sometime in the last year, her phone had become a permanent fixture of her body. Always in her hand, always angled slightly away when I entered the room. The screen lit up as I walked past. One message. Just 5 words. Is he still there? That's it. No name. Just a number. Not saved as a contact. The preview lingered for a second before fading back to black. But the words sat in my chest like a weight. I stood there frozen, not touching the phone, not even blinking, just staring. It didn't make sense. I wasn't supposed to see that. She wouldn't have left her phone there if she knew someone was going to text her something like that. And yet, there it was. Before I could even begin to process it, she walked back in, carrying 2 fresh glasses of wine. She looked surprised to see me standing there, like she hadn't expected me back so soon. "You okay?" she asked, a soft tilt in her voice. "Yeah, just felt a little cold out." She handed me one of the glasses, her eyes darting, just for a second, toward her phone. She didn't rush to pick it up. She didn't say anything about it at first. Just sat down on the couch, pulled her legs up beneath her and waited. After a beat, she leaned over and picked up the phone like it was nothing. A quick flick of the screen. She turned it face down on the cushion. "Oh, that was Stacy," she said suddenly, tossing in a casual laugh like a pinch of seasoning. "She's going through that whole divorce mess. She probably meant to send that to someone else. Poor thing." I nodded, said nothing. Let her talk. Then she added, and I'll never forget this part, "I must have left my phone on the couch by accident." That's when something inside me shifted. Because no, she didn't. Miley didn't leave her phone anywhere anymore. Not since early November, when she got a new job and suddenly started talking about NDAs and internal data policies, and how she couldn't share anything on her phone without breaching some imaginary corporate rule. She used to leave her phone charging in the kitchen overnight. Now it stayed next to her on the nightstand, in the bathroom, by the sink while she cooked, on walks, Even in the shower sometimes, wrapped in a towel. But here it was left out, right before midnight, with a message like that lighting up the screen. We sat there while the final seconds ticked away. She turned the music down and leaned into me, resting her head on my shoulder. "Midnight," she whispered. The fireworks outside burst into life. Somewhere down the street, a car horn blared in celebration. I kissed her. She kissed me back. But it didn't feel right. It felt like someone else's scene. Someone else's life I'd stepped into by mistake. Like we were playing the part of a happy couple in a commercial for holiday wine. She smiled and clinked her glass against mine. "To us," she said. "To us," I echoed. But in the space between our glasses touching and my lips meeting the wine, something inside me cracked. Quietly, not loud enough to hear, but deep enough to feel. We cleaned up a little after. She hummed as she rinsed a couple of dishes. I sat down, staring at the TV without really watching anything. I tried to convince myself it wasn't a big deal, that I was overthinking, that it really was just Stacy, but my gut didn't buy it. At 12:14 a.m., she disappeared into the bathroom, said she needed to take her makeup off, but I heard no water, no movement. And then, 15 minutes after midnight, my phone buzzed on the table next to me. It was her. "We need to talk." That's all it said. No emojis. No context. Just 5 words, the same number of words as the message she got from the unknown number. Only this time they were for me. I stared at the screen, my heart sinking slowly through my chest like a stone into deep water. Next to my phone, barely visible under a stack of unopened mail, sat an envelope. Inside were divorce documents. Drafted, not finalized. Preemptive move I never thought I'd use. I'd gotten them after a conversation with a lawyer friend, back when Miley started working late and I started sleeping on the edge of the bed. I hadn't opened the envelope in weeks. But tonight, I slid it out from under the mail. Just held it there, unopened, while the message from her, "We need to talk," glared at me from my screen. I didn't reply. Not yet. She came out of the bathroom a few minutes later, hair tied back, face clean, smile practiced. "You coming to bed?" she asked. "In a bit," I said, tucking the envelope back under the mail like a secret I wasn't ready to tell. She nodded and disappeared down the hallway, and I just sat there, listening to the soft creak of the bedroom door closing, wondering if she was texting someone else from under the covers, wondering who the he was, and why he mattered more than me. After that night, something changed in me. It wasn't like I stormed around the house looking for answers or started grilling her every time her phone buzzed. No, it was quieter than that, more internal, like I had flipped a switch in my head from trust to observe. I stopped taking things at face value. I started noticing everything I used to brush off. Funny how that works. How your mind begins to replay the past like it's been holding on to footage just waiting to be re-examined. The first thing that stood out? Her mornings. Miley had never been a morning person. Not when we first started dating, not when we moved in together, and definitely not during the early years of marriage. She used to hit snooze 3 times before dragging herself out of bed. Winter, forget it. She'd wrap herself in a blanket like a human burrito and declare war on daylight. But starting sometime in November, maybe late October, she began waking up early. Like really early. 6 a.m. Sharp, sometimes before. She told me it was because she'd started jogging again. Wanted to clear her head before work. I remember raising an eyebrow at her the first time she said it. Miley hated the cold. She wouldn't go out for groceries if it was under 50 degrees. But now she was jogging in 35? At first, I believed her. Mostly because I wanted to. She'd come back just as I was waking up, kiss me on the forehead, and disappear into the shower. But then I started to pay attention to the details, the ones I'd ignored before. No sweat. Not even flushed cheeks. Makeup already on. Hair curled some days. Full-on outfit changes. Like she was ready for a boardroom, not a treadmill. Then there was her phone. She used to toss it on the kitchen counter when we got home from work. Let it buzz while she cooked or sat on the couch. Sometimes I'd pick it up and read funny texts from her sister or help her respond to group chats. We had nothing to hide from each other. That's how we used to be. Now, her phone was always with her. Every room, every minute. Shower? Wrapped in a towel. Bathroom? Clutched like a passport in an airport. Even in sleep, it sat under her pillow, screen dimmed, notifications off. When I asked her about the new lock code, she said it was a requirement from her company's IT department. Security policies are nuts these days, she'd laughed. They even made me update my cloud settings. I didn't question it, at least not aloud. But when she started taking calls in the garage, door half shut, music from the car playing loud enough to mask her voice, it felt less like IT policy and more like strategy. She got a new jacket around the same time. Short, stylish, way thinner than anything practical for the season. I complimented her on it once, trying to keep things light. She just smiled and said she wanted to feel cute again. That's the thing, she did look different. Not bad, just different. Like she was dressing for someone who wasn't me. More heels. More lipstick. She used to make fun of those long matte reds influencers wore. Now she had 3 shades of it in the bathroom drawer. One was labeled Crimson Hour. I saw it on the receipt once. Still, I didn't say anything. Not yet. Then came the tickets. I was grabbing something from her car, jumper cables, I think, and found them in the glove box. 2 tickets to a theater show downtown. Date printed clear as day. Friday, January 6th. Same night she told me she was having a girls' dinner. Even gave me the rundown. Said they'd be drinking wine at Nicole's and not to wait up. I brought it up casually that weekend. Oh, she said, barely missing a beat. Those were for Amanda. She couldn't go last minute, so she asked if I'd hold on to them. I must have forgotten they were in there. Maybe I'd have believed her, if the tickets weren't still in her purse the next morning. That's when the memories started hitting harder. Moments I'd shrugged off or explained away. A laugh that was too forced. A conversation that ended when I entered the room. That weird weekend she claimed she had a migraine and stayed at her sister's. Except her sister had posted a story from a wine tasting out of town and Miley wasn't in it. And the playlist. God, the playlist. She had started using Spotify more lately, which wasn't unusual. But one night, I was up late working and noticed she'd left her laptop open. A new playlist was on the screen. The title was When It's Just Me. I clicked out of curiosity. The first song was called Run. The second, The Secret You Keep. The whole list read like a soundtrack to a breakup she hadn't told me about yet. Lyrics about hiding feelings, starting over, letting go. Songs in a genre she never used to touch. Not one song we'd shared. Not a single track that reminded me of us. It was like a diary written in melodies, and I wasn't in it. I listened to all of it. Every single song. Alone. It's strange how a heart doesn't break all at once. It's not loud, like in the movies. It's not even a moment, really. It's more like a slow, creeping chill that settles into your bones until one day you wake up and realize you've been freezing for weeks. I stopped asking where she was going when she left the house. Stopped asking who she was texting, or why her smiles felt borrowed. I stopped trying to convince myself I was imagining things. Because deep down I already knew. There was someone else. I didn't know who, not yet. But there was a pattern forming. A rhythm. The early jogs. The red lipstick. The locked phone. The theater tickets. The emotional distance disguised as routine. It all pointed to a version of Miley I didn't recognize. One that had already left the building but was still sleeping beside me. And maybe the worst part was, I still loved her. Even as I suspected the truth. Even as I built theories in my head. Even as I waited for the dam to finally break. She still laughed at my dumb jokes sometimes. Still reached for my hand in public. Still cooked dinner on Sundays like she always had. But it wasn't the same. I could feel it in the spaces between her sentences. The silence in the car. The moments she touched my shoulder but didn't look me in the eyes. I started losing sleep. Not because I was afraid of what I might find, but because I already knew and I couldn't figure out what to do with that knowledge. Confronting her felt too soon. Staying silent felt like slow suicide. So I did what people do when they don't want to know the truth. I waited, watched, listened, and I started preparing myself for the day I wouldn't be able to pretend anymore. It was early February when everything stopped being a theory. Up until that point, I still had room for denial. Not much, but enough to breathe through. Enough to think, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I've been collecting puzzle pieces that don't belong to the same picture. Maybe she really is just distant, tired, stressed, lost in some internal fog. Not cheating, not him, but suspicion doesn't come with a safety net. You either step off the edge or you don't. That week, she told me she'd be working late. Another client dinner. They'd been happening more often lately. She'd gotten good at sprinkling in believable details. Names I didn't recognize, firm-sounding titles, vague restaurant locations. This time it was someone named Jason. "He's flying in from Chicago," she said. "Big deal. Can't miss it." I didn't argue. I just nodded, smiled, kissed her forehead like a husband should, told her to have a good time. But I already knew where she'd be. See, I used to do some consulting for a lighting firm a few years ago. One of the spots we worked on was a fancy little restaurant by the water called Pier 14. It was the kind of place people booked for anniversaries or to impress someone they weren't supposed to be seen with. Mood lighting, private booths, valet. The kind of restaurant where everyone whispered even when there was nothing to hide. Back then, I'd been given a back entrance access card, part of my contractor package. I never turned it in, never thought I'd use it again. Until that night, I arrived before her, parked around the corner, entered through the staff hallway, slipped into the back corridor near the kitchen. The place hadn't changed. Still smelled like lemon oil and grilled sea bass. Still played that soft, jazzy piano over hidden speakers. I stood behind a frosted glass divider, just close enough to see without being seen. I waited, and then she arrived. Red lipstick, silver dress, the one with the slit she swore she bought, just because it was on sale. Her hair was curled tighter than usual, her walk slower. She looked lighter, like a version of herself I hadn't seen in months, maybe longer. Jason stood to greet her, tall, polished, suit tailored like it came with a six-figure bonus. He pulled out her chair, and she touched his arm when she sat. That's the moment I stopped hoping. Their drinks came quickly. She sipped something clear with lime. He ordered wine. They laughed. Not the way coworkers laugh. Not polite. Not restrained. They were locked in. The world around them disappeared. Then, the part that broke me, not the loud kind of break, not something you hear, just something you feel in your chest when it hollows out completely. He leaned in, said something close to her ear. She laughed. Really laughed. Not the brittle one she'd been offering me lately. No, this one had warmth, relaxation, a softness I hadn't heard in months. And then she reached for him. Not like friends. Not like colleagues trying to impress a client. Her hand slid around the back of his neck and stayed there. Then she kissed him. Not quick. Not guilty. Like it had already happened before and this was just routine. And I just stood there, watching a version of my life that no longer belonged to me. I didn't move. Didn't cry. Didn't blink, I don't think. Just stayed rooted in place while the weight of it all finally dropped. Not like an explosion, but like wet cement being poured over your chest. I left before they got dessert. Back at home, she returned around 10:30, heels in hand, hair tousled just slightly. She kissed me on the cheek, said, "Sorry, traffic was a nightmare," and headed upstairs to shower. I didn't say a word. The next morning, she brought me coffee. Talked about meetings, about how exhausting client dinners could be. She said Jason was a handful, that he dominated the conversation, but she played along because it was all about closing. I nodded through all of it. She never once mentioned the silver dress, or how she laughed like she forgot I existed, or how her hand stayed on his neck like she was afraid to let go. Because in her mind, I didn't know. And I let her believe that. I could have said something, could have brought it all down right there. But I didn't. Not yet. Something in me had shut off, not out of weakness, but out of clarity. Because there's a difference between catching someone and understanding the betrayal. It's not just about what they do. It's about the choice. That she chose to be there with him, laughing like she hadn't laughed with me in months. That she wore the lipstick she never put on for me anymore. That she touched him like it was muscle memory. That she walked back into our house after, sat across from me at the table, and still managed to say, "You're quiet today." Yeah, I was quiet, because I had seen the truth now. Not the version filtered through excuses or smokescreens. The raw version. The one no text message could downplay. The one that didn't fit inside a carefully worded lie. And with that, something else shifted in me, something final. I stopped asking questions. Stopped analyzing the signs. Stopped wondering if I was overreacting. Because now I knew. And when you know, there's no going back. There's no repairing the wall when you've seen how deep the crack runs. No gluing together the trust when you've watched the pieces fall in slow motion. I didn't throw a fit. Didn't call her names. Didn't sleep on the couch. I still made dinner 2 nights later. Still helped her hang the new frame she bought from the farmer's market. Still texted her during the day like things were fine. Because at that point, it wasn't about saving the marriage anymore. It was about setting the stage for something else. Something she wouldn't see coming. But that was for later. Right now, I just let it settle. Let the reality of what I saw harden into something permanent. Something I could hold on to when the doubt inevitably crept in again. Because that's what betrayal does. It gaslights you even when you have evidence. Makes you second-guess your own eyes. Makes you wonder. Maybe that kiss didn't mean what I think it meant. Maybe there's still a way out. But there wasn't. She made sure of that the moment she put her hand on his neck and closed her eyes. That's not something you do when you're figuring things out. That's something you do when you've already made your decision, and you're just waiting for the paperwork to catch up. And in that moment, I realized something else. Something I hadn't been ready to admit before. She didn't leave on New Year's Eve. She'd already been gone long before that. Emotionally, mentally, maybe even physically. I just hadn't seen it clearly until now. She was already living in a different chapter. One where I was a supporting character at best. And me? I was finally ready to close the book. After Pier 14, I stopped looking for proof. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't need any more. I'd already seen it with my own eyes. I felt it in my gut. The kiss, the laughter, the way her hand lingered just a second too long on the back of his neck. That was the moment the scales tipped. From confusion to clarity. From pain to purpose. I didn't confront her. Didn't blow it all up like I always thought I would if something like this ever happened. Turns out, when betrayal is real, when it hits you in the chest and settles in like concrete, the last thing you want is a dramatic scene. You want control. You want silence. You want a plan. So I became someone else. Not a liar. Just a quieter version of myself. Not cold. Just calculated. I played the role perfectly. Smiled when she smiled. Laughed when she laughed. Held her hand in public. Kissed her on the forehead every morning. I made coffee for her before work. Asked how her meetings were. Listened to her stories, even the ones I knew were fake. And all the while I was building my exit. I started with the lawyer, same one who'd drawn up those draft divorce papers I never opened. This time I opened them. Walked into his office and said I was ready. He didn't ask why. Maybe he already knew. Maybe he'd seen the look in my eyes before, that strange mixture of sorrow and steel. He told me to gather everything, texts, photos, records, location data. He said the more I had, the easier it would be to secure what was mine. So I did. Turns out she'd made it easy. The security camera by our side gate, the one she thought was just a motion light, had picked up more than raccoons. I pulled footage from late nights, early mornings. Once, she'd left in joggers and a hoodie at 5:45 a.m. and came back around 7:20, hair done, lipstick perfect. The same camera caught her kissing someone by the fence before stepping inside. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I didn't need to. Then there was her iCloud synced automatically from her phone. She must have forgotten. I hadn't logged into that account in years, but the password hadn't changed. I clicked through the photos slowly, like defusing a bomb. One image stopped me cold. Backseat of a rental car. Timestamp, 1:07 a.m. Location tagged near her office. Her face angled toward someone just outside frame. her hand on his leg, the blur of his smile barely visible. She'd taken it, saved it, kept it in a folder marked personal. That folder alone could have ended everything, but I kept going. I exported every photo, every message backup, every shared location ping that didn't match what she told me. I organized it by date. My lawyer said I had enough to tip the scales hard. Meanwhile, at home, I was the ideal husband. I washed dishes without being asked. I complimented her hair when she got it done. I even suggested a weekend away, just the two of us. She seemed surprised, touched even, said she'd think about it. I didn't care if she accepted. I just needed her to keep believing nothing had changed. I studied the accounts. The house in my name. The car, leased under my company's umbrella. The joint checking? She hadn't noticed I'd already shifted the balance into a new private account. Left just enough in the original one to keep up appearances. I was methodical, careful, quiet, and it worked. She had no idea. She kept talking about the future, how we should travel more, get back into hiking, adopt a dog. She started using we again, like she hadn't kissed another man while I was watching. It was almost impressive, the way she twisted reality around herself, like she believed the lie so deeply that it became her truth. Then came the second message. Another, we need to talk. This one came late. I was brushing my teeth, phone charging on the sink. She sent it from downstairs, where she sat on the couch with a glass of wine. I saw the preview flash across the lock screen. Same exact words. This time I replied, already had that talk. With a lawyer. I didn't hear her come up. I didn't need to. The bathroom door opened behind me slowly, her reflection materializing in the mirror like a ghost. Her face was still, pale. What does that mean? She asked, voice low. I spit out toothpaste and looked at her through the mirror. It means we're done. She blinked, lips parting, then closing again. You're serious? As serious as you were when you kissed him. Silence. Then the tears. Of course. The same script everyone uses when they're caught. The shaking voice. The sudden regret. The please let me explain mode. But I didn't want explanations. I wanted completion. She asked who told me. I said no one had to. I saw everything. She asked if we could fix it. I told her we were beyond that. You didn't just make a mistake, I said. You built a second life. You made me a placeholder while you figured out who you wanted to be. She didn't argue, just stood there, arms crossed like she was holding herself together. You can't just throw this away, she said. We've built a life. No, I replied. I built it. You just borrowed it. Then I walked past her, calm as ever, and went to bed. The next morning, I called the lawyer and gave the green light. The papers would be ready in a week. Service would be handled discreetly or directly, depending on my choice. I hadn't decided yet, but something told me she'd make that part easy, too. She was gone for 3 days. No note, no follow-up text, no explanation, just vanished like a puff of smoke. I came home from work the morning after I told her, really told her, and found her side of the closet empty. A few drawers left open, some hangers swinging like they'd just been disturbed. Her toothbrush was gone. So was the red lipstick from the bathroom drawer. That somehow made me laugh. 3 days of silence. I didn't call. I didn't text. I didn't ask where she went. And she didn't tell me. It was like she understood, deep down, that nothing she could say would fix it. So instead, she retreated. Maybe to Jason. Maybe to some friend she hadn't told me about. I didn't care. By day 3, I was starting to believe that maybe this was how it would end. Quietly. No screaming. No desperate pleas. Just a slow, deliberate fade out. The way some people stop showing up to work one day and never come back. Like life had cut to black mid-sentence. But then she returned. Same door. Same key. Same casual footsteps across the hardwood floor. Like she had just gone out for groceries. I was in the kitchen when she walked in, wearing the old gray sweater she'd taken from me years ago. The one I used to wear when I didn't care how I looked. The one she always said smelled like home. She had her hair pulled back, minimal makeup, and in her hands, a paper bag with my favorite loose-leaf tea, and a small jar of honey from the shop 2 towns over. I didn't speak. She set the bag down on the counter and gave me a small, unsure smile. "I thought you'd be needing this," she said. "You always drink more tea when you're thinking." I didn't answer, just stared at her like she was a stranger who had wandered into the wrong house. She looked around slowly, like she was taking inventory of the damage. Everything was the same physically, but something in the air had shifted. She could feel it. "You haven't changed anything," she said softly. "No reason to." She nodded, picked up the bag and started putting the items away like she still lived here, like she hadn't kissed another man, like she hadn't packed her things and disappeared for 72 hours. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she said, not facing me. I stayed silent. "And I get it now. I do." Still, I said nothing. She turned around, leaned back against the counter, and folded her arms. That same defensive posture she always defaulted to when she felt the truth creeping in. "I wasn't trying to ruin us," she said. I lost sight of what we were." "What were we, Miley?" She blinked at the question, swallowed hard. "I don't know anymore," she admitted. "But I want to find out again." Then came the act. I could see it form before she even moved. The second version of her. The one that always knew how to dial the volume just right. Not too desperate, not too calm. Just enough sadness to make it seem like she understood, but still hopeful enough to imply this wasn't final. She cooked that night. Candlelight like New Year's. The same playlist from that night, too. I noticed the familiar chords, the way she was trying to resurrect some version of us that no longer existed. She poured wine, lit the expensive candles, told stories from the past like we were on a nostalgia tour. I played along, nodded, laughed at the right beats, ate the soup she made. She even asked if I wanted to go away together. "Just the weekend," she said. "Somewhere quiet. Just us. Clear our heads." I agreed. Why not? The next few days were oddly peaceful. She kept her phone face up now, always visible, always open. Messages came in from coworkers, family, a few girlfriends. Nothing suspicious. No numbers without names. No odd phrasing. Just perfectly curated normalcy. Too perfect. Jason didn't come up again. Not once. So I brought him up. "What happened to the big project?" I asked casually over breakfast. She looked up from her coffee, shrugged. "Wrapped. Management moved it to another region. He's not on it anymore." Just like that. Neat and tidy. Wrapped up like a bad dream we could both pretend never happened. That same night, after she fell asleep on the couch next to me, her head resting against my shoulder like old times, I got the notification. Backyard motion camera. 1:16 a.m. Movement by the gate. I tapped the alert and there he was. Jason. Not dressed like a man showing up to end things. Dressed like a man who'd been invited. He slipped through the side gate like he'd done it before. Looked around once. Then headed toward the back door. I paused the clip. Rewatched it. Let it sink in. She was good. I'll give her that. Good at the performance. The sweater. The soup. The tea and honey. The innocent phone displays. The nostalgia. She thought the silence meant I was softening. That if she could wrap the old version of herself in enough warmth and wear it around me, I'd forget what she'd done. Forget who I saw her become. But she didn't realize that while she was planning her comeback, I was planning my conclusion. She was staging a reunion. I was writing the credits. I waited not for revenge, just for the right moment. She kept pretending and I kept letting her. Candlelit dinners, soft music, fake laughter. I watched it all like someone who had already moved out emotionally. Then, at 4:13 a.m., I got the notification. The back door. Jason leaving. Hoodie pulled up. Head down. He didn't even look toward the camera. That morning, I signed the final documents. Division of assets. Custody of peace. No drama, no last fight. I scheduled the papers to be served at her office, front desk, mid-morning, in front of her team. I wasn't being cruel. I was being final. After that, nothing. No calls. No apologies. She just disappeared. The last thing I saw was her on the driveway cam. Suitcase in hand, red jacket, heading for her car. The same red jacket she wore when she first moved in. She didn't say goodbye. And honestly, I didn't need one. A week later, I sat on the porch of the lake house she once wanted to sell. The lake was still, half-frozen, silent. I held a mug of tea, the kind she used to buy, and listened to the wind without needing answers. She was gone now, not just physically. She had started leaving long before New Year's. I just hadn't seen it. Not until the door clicked. Not until that message lit up her screen. Is he still there? Yeah. I was, and now I wasn't. She chose fireworks so she wouldn't hear the collapse. But I chose silence. And that silence became peace. While she was still drafting lies, I was sitting in a lawyer's office. While she was texting, "We need to talk." I had already had the last conversation. This time, not with her, but with myself. I never raised my voice, never begged. I just let go. And when I did, I didn't lose anything worth keeping.